Welcome to the DAP Project. This is Rhonda.
And I'm Aaron.
We are releasing this interview with David and Darnell, who are besties since they were in short pants the weekend after my birthday. My birthday is July 9. Shout out to all the July babies, because this first interview was truly a gift to me. It was recorded back in March of 2020, so when the world was very different. And my brother and cousin were extremely generous and patient with us as we got ourselves together. Dave and Darnell's family name is Cuzzo, so you might hear that in the course of our conversation. Explain things about DAP that we would carry into our future interviews. I think I quote Cuzzo so often in future interviews because what they said was just so foundational to our understanding. They said that DAP is love, that DAP is sometimes the only genuine greeting that a guy may get in a day, that giving DAP in a gentrifying city, our city of DC, is like saying, I see you, when it may feel like the rest of the world is actually ignoring you. As family, I've loved these two long time, and this conversation just deepened our connection as family. So I'm really excited to bring it to this space and to share it with the growing DAP community. Aaron, what really resonated with you sitting at the dining room table with two siblings and a cousin?
This interview, and I mean, Rhonda, I've enjoyed all 8 of the interviews we've done so far, but this interview is by far my favorite, simply for one reason. When we said we were going to do the DAP project, basically sit down and have conversations with people about how black men greet each other and what that means. I think, we'll sit down for 15, 20 minutes and they'll tell us, they do a handshake and they'll say, it means this, that, or the other. But we sat down for over an hour, probably an hour and a half, before we cut a few segments out of this interview. And we could have talked even more. So what I gained from this interview was we actually are dissecting or getting into a piece of the culture that hasn't really been fully explored. We'll see over the next few months, what we have discovered about DAP, but there's just so much to it. And every person that we sit down with, we get more and more unique takes on what DAP is. And that is so cool to me, and I'm looking forward to hearing more conversations. But Darnell and David, great start. I appreciate you all. Let's get into it.
We are very interested in this thing called DAP, or what Darnell called the love. And Aaron and I have had a lot of conversations over the past couple of months about it, and he's as interested in it as I am. We had like a whole 45-minute breakdown initially a couple months ago. And then just last Sunday, Dave and I were just talking in the kitchen over brunch, and he just had all this insight. And to continue that conversation, we brought in you, Cuzzo.
Okay.
You guys have a lot to talk about, so Aaron has some questions. These are your questions, right?
I came up with a lot of random questions. But at first, I want to start off just putting on record. How long have you, the answer to this question may be how old you are, but just how long have you lived in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, all my life.
All my life, and that?
I'm 35. I'm 35. So,
cool.
Yeah. 35 years, born and raised.
Born and raised in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I lived in D.C. since 1999. 21 years, but I took about here and there around 2004 and 2007. I took a year or two away, so I'd say I'm an 18-year transplant Washingtonian. But
I appreciate that you said transplant.
Absolutely. I by no means claim to be a true Washingtonian, because when I meet real Washingtonians, I know that it's not the same. It's not the same. love and appreciation for the culture and what DC really is different from my perspective versus someone who's actually lived here all their life. So I always respect that. But when Rhonda came to me and said, "Yo, Aaron, I want to do a project on DAP." DAP amongst black men is something that is like, that's our thing. When you just said it, it's like, yo, I gave him some love. That's what DAP is in my mind. The way I immediately translate it is like, it's not just a handshake. A handshake is what you give random Joe Schmo, but DAP is like a way to communicate something a little bit deeper, and we're trying to uncover, peel back the onion and figure out what that is a little bit deeper, that we are communicating as men. I also have shared that men don't communicate like women do, talking. We don't have long, drawn-out conversations generally. You will with your family members. You will with that one cousin or whatnot that you're really close to. And like, we just met, but it was because we are black men, and I think also because we're in DC, also because I'm in your family home. It was something about our interaction that required us to give depth to one another versus, "Hey, what's up, man?" or handshake, or "Hi, how you doing?" or something formal.
Right.
Simply because of the melanin in my skin, maybe the locks I have on my head, maybe the fact that I had a glass of whiskey sitting in front of me. All those factors came into play as this saying why it's okay to get this dude dap.
And Darnell actually spoke to that when we were talking about it earlier. He said, "I saw the Henny on the table." And that was
this one, like, when you from first glance, of course, you would think it was Henny, but it's all,
So Darnell, 35 years, 35 also?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Have you lived in any other cities?
I lived in North Carolina, in Winston-Salem. I live in Columbia right now. I was down there for 4 years.
Okay.
I lived in Columbia for 3. I lived in Cheverly, Maryland for 2. 2 years. So college down in Winston, in North Carolina.
Okay, what school?
Winston-Salem State.
Cool. All right.
You've been here the whole time, right, Darnell?
Yeah. Well, I've been other places. I lived out for short periods of time.
I don't know if you call that like an experience in the city though.
Yeah, I mean, but it was definitely experience among men. You looking for that, man. The brotherly love. It was not that over there.
I'm so dead right now.
Well, yeah.
All intents and purposes.
Yeah.
Right. See, it's something special about that, because I know exactly what you're saying.
Right.
We have a way of communicating with each other that's so unique.
That's right.
And we're not talking about the DAP here. We're talking about the communication amongst black folks, and we want to get into how the DAP is a big part of that.
And what's interesting to me about it, as a black woman being on the outside, is that I don't understand everything that is being communicated in the moment. And one, I am prohibited almost from receiving it or giving it. And even every woman knows this, every black woman knows this, that if a dude daps you up, it's like, wait, what is that? Or finally, but it's a moment. It's like a reckoning. So, well, maybe you think differently, but would you ever dap Keisha? Or
No,
I mean,
I wouldn't dap a woman. I wouldn't dap a woman. Period.
Why not?
I mean, I give her a hug, or
I know, but why not that?
Because it's a manly thing. It's because I gotta slap your hand, and then sometimes that hurt, I'm thinking from a woman's point of view, like if I'm slapping your hand like that, I'm putting some strength behind it, and some men like, got unconscious way of like, they might squeeze your hand, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think a woman would.
Sweaty palms.
Yeah, sweaty palms. It's a lot that goes with that interaction that we can easily just brush off as like, I just gave him a 5,
It is.
He didn't mean to hurt me or harm me. Like, I gotta accidentally give you a 5. You're like, ow. You know, so it's like I wouldn't.
If
I
it
just
is,
wouldn't do it.
if it is, probably playing around like a female is joking.
Right, yeah.
It's not in like a greeting sort of manner.
Yeah.
So